Good morning. We celebrate today the obligatory memorial of Saint Athanasius. Saint Athanasius was born in 295, died in 373. He's a doctor of the church. He's one of the four original Eastern doctors of the church, like with Gregor of Nazianzen, Basil the Great, and of course the fourth one slips my mind at the moment. But at any rate, he was bishop of Alexandria for, I think like 40 years or 45 years, a long time. And he was a great defender of the Council of Nicaea in 325 and fought against the Arians. If you remember, the Arian heresy was that Jesus was not divine. He was the first and highest human being, but he was created. And Athanasius suffered a great deal, was exiled multiple times, but suffered a great deal for his defense that Jesus Christ was divine. What's funny is he's known, one of his kind of monikers is Saint of the Incarnation. So he also is known for his explanation of the incarnation of Christ. And he wrote a book, a treatise called On the Incarnation, and another one Against the Arians, where he talks about this idea of the divine taking flesh. And I thought I'd riff on that a little bit because this idea of the incarnation, literally in becoming or going into flesh, becoming flesh. The first reading today, you can use either the reading of the day or you can use some particular readings for a saint. The particular reading for St. Athanasius, the first reading is from St. John's first letter. He says, Beloved, everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ is begotten by God. And everyone who loves the Father loves also the one begotten by him. And so this idea that Jesus is begotten by God and he takes flesh, right? First of all, though, he's begotten by God. Then he takes flesh, and the person begotten by God becomes enfleshed. But whoever believes in Jesus is the Christ, is the Messiah, is also begotten. And here John really is kind of referring to, because we're already born, right? It's like Jesus' conversation with one of the Pharisees to be reborn. And Pharisees wonder, how can that be? Can a man go back into the womb and be, no, but we are reborn. We're begotten by God in baptism, really, right? We die and we rise again. We become a new person in Christ, as Paul would say. And so this idea of begetting, but Paul goes on, we know that we love the children of God when we love God and obey his commandments. For the love of God is this, that we keep his commandments. So how do we make our love for God, how do we make that take flesh? You've heard me say this before. It's another way of saying love looks like something. When you love, that love wants to take flesh in some way, right? It wants to instantiate itself. It wants to be seen. And so we want to love God, first of all, by keeping his commandments. That's how we love God. John says later, anyone who says he loves God but doesn't keep his commandments is a liar, And it makes sense. If you say you love your parents but disobey them all the time, do you really love your parents? Probably not. One of the ways I show my love for the bishop is by doing what the bishop asks me to do. And so when we love God, first of all, we keep his commandments. But love is more than just obeying rules or keeping commandments. It's also what? We almost beget new things. We find new ways to show our love. We think to ourselves, okay, how can I show my appreciation? Just that question. I know you've asked that. How can I? So there's something, we want to give birth to something new. We want to beget some new thing that says, I love you. And so, first of all, we obey God's commandments. But secondly, then we love each other in ways. We show love for God's people is a way of showing God that we love God. And so it's the biggest difference, between helping someone as a social worker and in helping someone as a Christian, is that we want to show God we love God by our help for this person. And so on this day of St. Athanasius, the doctor of the Incarnation, I invite you to think about that. How can I show God I love him today? We don't do things so that God will love us. We do things so that we can show God that we love God, right? And God does the same thing, right? God so loved the world, what? That he sent his only son, right? So God shows us his love by some action or thing, and so it's just returning that. So let's love God today, and let's find ways to show God today we love God, And I encourage you, and I do this, make it a specific connection, Maybe not, don't, if you're doing something for a person, you don't say, well, I'm doing this to show God I love him, But in your heart, you say, God, would you take this act as an act of me showing that I love you, And if we fill our days, or try to, with acts of love for God, it will change our day. It certainly will change others' days too, So as we think about the incarnation today on the feast of St. Athanasius, we think about that God's love was incarnated and became a person. Let's take our love, incarnate that love, and let there be tangible ways that God can see that we love him. And I love you.